in this moment, and at that time, I'm like, man, this is what it's supposed to be. Like, I'm supposed to be here, and I'm excited for what's to come.
The Milwaukee Bucks might have just had the craziest 6-month period of any team in the NBA. They finished the 2023 regular season with the best record in the entire league, only to get demolished in the first round by an 8th-seeded Miami Heat team, who almost missed the postseason entirely. Then, because of their lackluster playoff showing, former head coach Mike Budenholzer gets fired and replaced by a first-year head coach in Adrian Griffin. All of this going into an offseason in which their 3-time All-Star in Chris Middleton and their Defensive Player of the Year runner-up in Brook Lopez hit unrestricted free agency. So understandably, there were a lot of questions surrounding the future of this Milwaukee Bucks team. But by the time the dust had settled in NBA free agency, Milwaukee made it out okay. They retained the main pieces of the championship core by bringing back Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez on new 2- and 3-year deals respectively. Plus, they added a solid spot-up shooter on the wing in Malik Beasley. However, they did lose some quality veteran rotation pieces in Jevon Carter, Joe Ingles, and Wesley Matthews, which contributed to a bigger problem: the Bucks' limited salary cap flexibility. See, going into the offseason, I only expected the Bucks to have enough money to bring back one of Jevon Carter or Joe Ingles after agreeing to deals with Middleton and Lopez. But they couldn't get either, because simply put, they didn't have enough money. The new contracts for Middleton and Lopez, along with filling out the rest of the roster, brought the Bucks' cap figure up to nearly $180 million for the 2023-24 season, meaning they were just shy of crossing the NBA's newly added second tax apron, which, if you didn't know, inflicts harsh penalty on any team that chooses to cross it, as it severely limits teams' ability to improve their roster if said team has multiple large contracts. And in the case of the Bucks, they had 4 guys making $25 million plus in 2023-24, which meant John Horst really couldn't make any significant upgrades to a team that had just lost in the first round. The only option was to run it back, get healthy, and pray that this team could recapture some of that 2021 championship magic. But then, Giannis Antetokounmpo said some things that would change everything.
As long as we play and we approach the game every single day the right way, and we all sacrifice for a common goal, I can see myself being in Milwaukee Bucks for the rest of my career. But the moment I feel like people are not committed as I am to get that golden pin in the back, I am not. I'm a Milwaukee Buck, but most importantly, I'm a winner. I want to win. I have to do whatever it takes for me to win, and if there's a better situation for me to win the Larry O'Brien, I have to take that better situation.
A key part of the Bucks offseason that I conveniently left out was the fact that Giannis Antetokounmpo was eligible for a new 3-year, $186.6 million contract extension starting September 22nd. But Giannis told the New York Times, quote, "Numbers-wise, it doesn't make sense to sign an extension. Next summer it would make sense for both parties. Even then, I don't know." And he's right. If he waits until next summer to sign an extension, he could earn a far more lucrative deal of about 4 years, $260 million. But even then, Giannis cast a shadow of doubt over this Bucks organization as it pertained to his future. But it isn't the first time he's done so. Back in the summer of 2020, the Bucks were coming off an embarrassing playoff loss to the Miami Heat, despite being named the heavy favorites to win the Eastern Conference. This prompted then-league MVP and Defensive Player of the Year Giannis Antetokounmpo to put just a bit of pressure on the Bucks front office to improve the roster in lieu of a potential extension with the organization, telling the media, quote, "As long as Milwaukee and I are on the same page when it comes to being one of the best teams in the league and winning championships, that's fine. When it changes, it will not be good. So I don't know what the plan is. It depends on what decisions they make. If they make the right decisions, I'll be there for many years. If they do not, we'll see. The NBA is business, and we take it day by day. Hopefully we can succeed together." Saying this was enough for Bucks GM John Horst to put everything on the line by making one of the biggest trades in franchise history to acquire Jrue Holiday. a move that impressed Giannis enough to the point where he was willing to sign his 5-year, $228 million Supermax extension not even a month after the trade took place. And luckily for everyone involved, it resulted in a championship. So after failing to get past the second round in 2 seasons since the 2021 championship, Giannis put more pressure on Jon Horst and the Bucks front office, and once again, Jon Horst delivered. This time, Jrue Holiday got sent out in the deal, alongside Grayson Allen, and virtually the rest of Milwaukee's future draft compensation, in exchange for arguably the greatest Portland Trailblazer of all time, in Damian Lillard. An absolute blockbuster of a deal. Not only because the pairing of Lillard and Giannis will probably be the best duo in the league, but because Miami was the rumored trade destination all offseason, just for the Bucks to swoop in out of nowhere just a week before training camp, which prompted an arms race in the East, as the Boston Celtics felt the need to then trade for Jrue Holiday. But that's another video for another day. The Dame trade was made not only to appease Giannis, but to extend the championship window for a Bucks team that looked stuck about a month ago. But unlike the Jrue Holiday trade, Giannis has remained non-committal to an extension following the Dame trade, at least for now.
It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense for me to sign it right now.
The good news for Milwaukee is Giannis still has 2 years left on his deal plus a player option, while Dame has 3 years left on his deal plus a player option. So at least internally, they shouldn't feel pressured by Giannis's looming extension, because odds are, the Lillard trade will be enough for him to extend next summer, as long as this team lives up to expectations. The only question is, what are those expectations? And what can we expect this Bucks team to look like on the floor come October 26th? We'll talk expectations towards the end, but as far as on-court product, let's see what Coach Adrian Griffin is looking for.
I think offensively, we want to take advantage of the special talent that's on this team, to create high percentage shots. Also, that means making teams pay for putting 2 or 3 bodies on the ball. So I think that's going to, work in our favor. So we're going to move the ball, a little bit more ball movement, body movement, get those high percentage shots in the paint. And then the threes will be there. We're not going to put any limits on the threes that we take, but they're going to be team threes. They're going to be rhythm threes. And then we're going to be a proactive defense, right? We're going to get after, we're going to pressure the ball. We're going to get turnovers, we're going to get out and run. We're also going to, make adjustments and throughout the game with our defense and switch up our defenses. We're going to try to put as many things in our favor. I'm just excited to get to work.
Starting with Griff's expectations on the offensive end, my takeaway was that he basically wanted to see smart team-oriented offense with a ton of ball and player movement, which should come relatively easy on a team led by Giannis and Dame. Because not only are those two awesome with the ball in their hands, but they're awesome without it too. Giannis is incredible at finding angles to dive to the rim and jockey for position on the interior, while Dame is great at running off of various drags and pin downs to relocate to more opportune spots of the floor. Throw in Lillard's ability to hit the 3 ball from 30 plus feet out, and Milwaukee's floor spacing should be immaculate, and they should be able to create plenty of high percentage looks thanks to the gravity of their 2 superstar players, who by the way are also both elite playmakers, which makes attempting to stop them in the pick and roll nearly impossible. And this ties back into what Coach Griff was saying about making teams pay for sending 2 or 3 guys at the ball. Because odds are, that'll be the case most of the time this Bucks offense runs a 2-man action with Dame and Giannis. Because if Giannis comes to set a screen for Dame, and the opposing team blitzes the screen, Dame will just send a dime to Giannis, who has a free slip to the basket. If the opposing defense commits to stopping Giannis's role, they're then relying on Lillard's on-ball defender to recover, which in most situations should give Dame just enough time to get to the basket with minimal help defense because Giannis's man is already pulled away from the basket. If the opposing defense decides to play drop when Dame comes off the screen, then he won't hesitate to torch you from long range. And if they switch, most of the time that should create a mismatch for both Dame and Giannis. And at that point, the Bucks can just pick and choose their best option to score. But as much of a problem as it'll be just trying to stop the 2 of them, you then have to worry about the other 3 guys on the court. Chris Middleton is a 3-time All-Star who averages 17 points per game on nearly 40% from deep for his career. He is coming off a slightly down year in terms of his statistical output, but that was mainly due to the fact that he spent most of last season trying to recover from a slew of injuries. Chris said it himself at Media Day. He feels like he has a fresh start with his body, and if that's actually the case, and he's fully healthy, that's extremely scary, because K-Mid averaged 20 plus points per game for 3 straight seasons prior to 2022-23, and in 2 out of those 3 seasons, he shot over 40% from 3. Now imagine that same guy getting some of the easiest looks of his life thanks to the amount of defensive attention that Giannis and Dame should take away from him. Then there's Brook Lopez, who, like Giannis, should pair as an elite pick-and-roll partner for Dame. He's coming off a season in which he ranked top 10 in pick-and-roll scoring amongst role men, at nearly 4 points per game on a 65.4% effective field goal percentage, putting him in the 82nd percentile of role men, which makes him the 3rd most efficient pick-and-roll scorer of that top 10. And the reason Brolo is so effective in the pick-and-roll simply boils down to his threat to roll or pop, as Brook is capable of catching lobs at the rim or extending the defense with his long ball. He was a 37% shooter from deep as a whole and 38% off the catch during this previous season, and those numbers should only increase while working in tandem with a guy like Damian Lillard. As for Milwaukee's 5th starter, we don't exactly know who that is yet. I wouldn't rule out guys like Jay Crowder or Marjon Beauchamp, but it'll more than likely be one of Malik Beasley or Pat Connaughton, both of whom are very capable spot-up shooters. They can be a little inconsistent at times, but they've also never played on a team that'll have this much space. So like Lopez and Middleton, their percentages should greatly increase. As for what Coach Griffin is looking for on the defensive end, he mentioned that he wanted to see a very proactive unit that played team defense, pressuring the ball at a high level and creating a lot of turnovers, which is pretty broad in terms of schematics, but he did say he wanted to make a ton of defensive adjustments on a game-to-game basis, which is a massive green flag, because one of the things that killed the Bucks during the 2023 playoffs was their unwillingness to double-team Jimmy Butler or make any sort of adjustments defensively. And Chris Middleton alluded to that when he spoke with JJ Redick on Old Man in the 3.
Yeah, it's tough to contain sometimes. I think especially if we don't throw double teams at them. So that's one thing we talked about, just didn't do it. That wasn't the game plan we wanted to go with.
These lack of playoff adjustments ultimately played a hand in the firing of Coach Budenholzer. So it's refreshing to hear that Coach Griffin wants to take immediate action if he sees something wrong, whether that be offensively or defensively. But the thing with this new look Bucks team is that Coach Griffin shouldn't have to worry too much about how this team performs offensively, just given the diversity that Dame and Giannis should bring on that end of the ball. Which does feel weird to say, because half-court offense down the stretch of games has easily been one of the Bucks' biggest weaknesses in recent seasons. But that just goes to show how big of an upgrade Damian Lillard is over Jrue Holiday on that end of the ball. However, Dame isn't Jrue on the defensive side of the ball either, and this has led to a lot of people to question what Milwaukee's perimeter defense will look like, because it's not like Pat Connaughton or Malik Beasley are great defensively, and Chris Middleton has certainly lost a touch of agility from all the knee injuries, which leaves Milwaukee's perimeter vulnerable. But what people forget is that the Bucks probably have the best backline in the league with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez. Giannis, a former Defensive Player of the Year, and Brook, last year's runner-up for the DPOY, should make it a living hell for opposing offenses on the interior. And then at that point, the perimeter just needs to do their best to stick with shooters. But here's another thing about Milwaukee's suspect perimeter defense. The truth is, they really haven't had an elite wing defender since PJ Tucker left. Jrue Holiday has really been the main guy defending some of the bigger wings the Bucks have had to play during the postseason. And as elite of a perimeter defender as a guy like Jrue is, he's only 6'5", 205 pounds. He's not exactly tailored to defend bigger wings, and the numbers support that. Because if you look at Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kevin Durant's numbers when Jrue is their primary defender in the playoffs, they've all found a decent amount of success. Which again, isn't me saying Jrue was playing bad defense, because that's far from the truth. All of these guys just happen to be much bigger than Jrue is, and they took advantage of that. So now, the Bucks just need to find someone who matches up better with those wings when it matters the most. And I think they have a few options. Jay Crowder is certainly a name that comes to mind. Like Jrue, he's not very tall, standing at only 6'6", but he is 230 pounds and extremely physical. Like Chris Middleton, Crowder has looked to have lost a touch of agility on the perimeter in the games we saw from him last season. But we've got to remember, he sat out up until late February due to his holdout with the Suns, so he probably wasn't all the way there in terms of his conditioning. And when he's fully healthy, we all know Jay Crowder to be a very serviceable perimeter and interior defender. So he's certainly someone that could take on some of those tougher assignments. Younger guys like MarJon Beauchamp and Andre Jackson Jr. could also be some very intriguing options as wing defenders. During his rookie season, Beauchamp primarily defended guards when he saw minutes, but he moves his feet well and uses his 6'7" frame to his advantage. His reaction time on the ball can be slow at times, but considering he was tasked with defending shiftier guards like Darius Garland, I give him somewhat of a pass, and oftentimes, he'd use his length to make up for his slow reactions anyways. Off the ball, Beauchamp proved to be a very solid screen navigator, which makes him an option to defend shooters who like to run off screens. And while he did spend most of his time on guards, he has shown the capability of defending wings, doing a decent job on guys like DeAndre Hunter, Keldon Johnson, and Denny Advia last season. As for rookie Andre Jackson Jr., at 6'6", 209 pounds, he was one of the best point of attack defenders in college basketball last season, who showed the capability to defend 1 through 3. Obviously, he is a rookie, and he was drafted in the second round. So usually guys like that don't make an immediate impact in year 1, especially not on a contender. But look at how Christian Braun worked out for Denver last season. I wouldn't rule out Jackson as a potential wing option within the Bucks rotation. But if you think I'm going too deep into the depth chart, let's go back to the starting lineup. Chris Middleton has been a viable perimeter defender in the past. It was really just the injuries that looked to be hampering his impact on the perimeter last season. So if Chris can remain fully healthy, he could be a lot better on that end of the ball this season, especially considering he won't be asked to do as much offensively now that Dame's in town. And speaking of Dame, though he hasn't been a very good defender throughout his career, it's not like he's ever had elite defenders to rely on elsewhere. With Giannis and Brook down low, Dame just needs to do his best on the perimeter, knowing he has help. And off the ball, I think he's smart enough to execute his rotations and read opposing defenses, which is something he touched on during media day.
And I think if you really take a look into my progression defensively, you'll see that I've gotten better year after year after year after year. And I think the main reason for that is understanding what's going on. I know players around the league. I understand calls. When I hear a call gets called out, I'm able to be ahead of it and understand what's happening. Also playing on a defensive-minded team this year, I think it'll make it more simple. Like Coach Griff was saying, I understand where to be on the floor. I understand how to rotate. I understand how to play team defense, but I'm a competitor. At the very least, on that end of the floor, I'm going to compete. I'm not going to come in here and beat Jrue Holiday. The people that I play against to tell you, like, I ain't a pushover. You know what I'm saying? And I've also had a lot of responsibility on the offensive end for my entire career, and I think playing with the kind of players I'll be playing with here, it'll also give me opportunity to, show myself much better on the defensive end of the floor.
By no means am I saying I expect Dame to be a defensive stopper, but as he said, he's at least going to compete on that end of the ball. And that's really all the Bucks can ask of him. Just be a smart team defender. Which brings me to Giannis Antetokounmpo, arguably the best defender in the game, and someone who has shown time and time again that he can defend on the perimeter. We saw it during the 2021 playoffs when Giannis took on the Jimmy Butler assignment in round 1 and completely shut him down. And while he didn't take on the primary defensive role for guys like Jason Tatum and Kevin Durant in 2021 and 2022 respectively, Giannis proved he could certainly make it tough on guys of that caliber holding both of them to under 40% shooting during those playoff series. So if Adrian Griffin needs Giannis to take on a bigger role on the perimeter defensively, I think it's something Antetokounmpo could do, especially given he'll still have elite rim protection, with Brook Lopez still manning the middle. But overall, for as many questions as there may be about Milwaukee's perimeter defense, I don't think it'll be as big of a concern as people are making it out to be, given the personnel the Bucks have on the roster and on the sideline. Plus, at the end of the day, the object of basketball is to outscore the other team. And Milwaukee has two guys coming off seasons in which they averaged 30+ points per game efficiently, on top of having other offensive threats like Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, and perennial 6th Man of the Year candidate Bobby Portis. Hell, even their recent addition of Cameron Payne will be a huge spark plug offensively off the Milwaukee bench. He's averaged double digits in his past 2 seasons with Phoenix, and has proven to be one of the best backup pick-and-roll operators in the league. His pick-and-roll numbers were slightly down this past season, but in 2021-22, he averaged a staggering 5 points per game as a PNR ball handler, which put him in the top 10 for players that received 6 or less pick-and-roll possessions per game. And in the 2020-21 season, Payne averaged just above 3 points per game as the PNR ball handler on an effective field goal percentage of over 52%, putting him in the 80th percentile of pick-and-roll ball handlers. So when Dame goes to the bench, Milwaukee's offense won't miss a beat in the pick-and-roll with a guy like Cam Payne to run it. But with everything else finally out of the way, it's finally time to address the expectations for this Milwaukee Bucks squad in 2023-24. And let's be honest, you guys already know my answer. This team is expected to hang a banner, which really should go unsaid after you trade for a player like Damian Lillard, but it's not going to be easy, because in trading for Dame, the Bucks sent out Jrue Holiday, knowing damn well he could end up on one of their biggest rivals, and sure enough, the Celtics got him, meaning they now have the best possible one-on-one defender for Damian Lillard, and a unit of guys like Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford, who are solid options to help neutralize Giannis. And if Milwaukee can get past a team like Boston and win the East, they'll have to face whichever juggernaut comes out of the West, whether that be Phoenix, LA, or the defending champion Denver Nuggets. But as long as this team can stay healthy, the Bucks should like their odds to capture their second Larry O'Brien in 4 seasons. Because as long as Dame and Giannis are on the floor, Milwaukee should always have the upper hand. But I hope you enjoyed. And with all that being said, peace.